You're just a kid. Sit down, keep your head down, and stay quiet.
The police officer slapped a 15-year-old girl straight across the face in the middle of the courtroom. The sound cracked like an explosion, but the entire room fell silent. No one dared to move. Only Maya Thompson, sitting in the last row of courtroom 12B, kept her composure. She had been there for 3 hours, her cup of coffee gone cold beside her, her notebook filled with dense observations. After 6 months of investigation, today would either close the case or send her back to square one. The old clock above the judge's bench had stopped working since 2019. The air conditioner had been broken for 2 years, leaving the air thick and stifling. Paint peeled from the walls like unhealed wounds. This was the courtroom reserved for cases no one wanted: poor kids, minorities' lives already written off by the system. At exactly 2:47, the doors opened. Zara Williams walked in. She was smaller than Maya expected, barely over 5 feet tall, with natural black hair tied back and a wrinkled school uniform. Her lips were swollen and split, her wrists still marked with bruises from handcuffs. But it was her eyes that caught Maya's attention. They were not panicked, not afraid. They were sharp, as if recording every detail to be kept as evidence. Officer Tom Bradley gently guided Zara to the defendant's table. He was one of the few Maya believed still carried a conscience. "Take it slow." "You okay, kid?" he asked softly. Zara only nodded, saying nothing. Maya flipped open the file. 3 days earlier, Zara had been walking home from school, passing Morrison's Grocery on 5th Street, when she witnessed a scene that changed her life. An elderly man named Robert Johnson, 82 years old, suffering from dementia, wobbled on a wooden cane whittled for him by his grandson. He had wandered away from his daughter's home and stood lost on the sidewalk, not knowing where to go. Someone had called in a suspicious person. When Officer Marcus Reed arrived, all he saw was an old black man with a cane, and for him that was threat enough. In less than 2 minutes, Reed closed in, shouting orders. Mr. Johnson couldn't respond, only mumbling, "I don't know." Before he could even understand, Reed grabbed his arm. Startled, the old man pulled back. Reed immediately shoved him hard in the chest. An elderly man with a cane could not withstand the force. He collapsed onto the concrete, his head cracking against the pavement, blood pouring out. His cane rolled into the street. At that very moment, Zara raised her phone and hit record. She didn't run forward. She didn't scream. She stood about 30 feet away, calmly pressing record. The footage was clear, the audio sharp. It showed a police officer using violence against an elderly man who posed no threat. Reed noticed. He barked. "Turn it off." Zara stepped back but kept her phone steady. "I'm standing on a public sidewalk. I have the right to record. I'm documenting police activity," she said. Reed lunged for the phone. Zara pulled back, trying to keep hold. During the struggle, he slammed her against a nearby car, splitting her lip and bruising her ribs. Yet she kept the phone. By the time other officers arrived, Zara was in handcuffs while Reed boldly accused her of assaulting him. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson was rushed to the hospital needing 12 stitches. The video quickly spread online, but instead of Reed facing consequences, it was Zara who became the defendant. She was charged with disorderly conduct, obstruction of justice, and resisting arrest. Maya scanned the room, memorizing every face. Judge Patricia Mills, 58 years old, 12 years on the bench, single with 3 cats. She was known for being tough on crime, which in practice meant lenient with police and harsh on defendants. In 12 years, not once had she ruled in favor of a civil rights plaintiff. Across from her stood prosecutor David Chen, 31, a Harvard graduate, the youngest in the district. His conviction rate was 94%, achieved mostly by coercing poor kids into plea deals. Facing him was Sarah Martinez, a 26-year-old public defender fresh out of law school, drowning in $180,000 of debt and juggling 37 cases at once. This was only her 5th trial, and her young face carried the weight of fear. At 3:15, Judge Mills entered. The entire courtroom rose. Maya noticed she didn't so much as glance at Zara. Court is now in session. The People versus Zara Williams Mills announced, striking her gavel. Chen straightened his tie, his navy blue suit gleaming in the shabby courtroom. His opening statement rolled off his tongue like a rehearsed script. Your Honor, this case is about respect for the law. The defendant, Williams, interfered with a lawful police action. When Officer Reed attempted a welfare check on an elderly man in distress, the defendant aggressively intervened. Maya scribbled a note. Frowning welfare check, a new phrase to cover the truth. Chen pressed on. The defendant filmed unlawfully, caused distraction, refused lawful orders, and resisted arrest. Officer Reed had no choice but to act to ensure public safety. Another note, resisting arrest. Every word was a layer of spin, turning a victim into the guilty party. Maya glanced at Zara. She sat straight, hands folded neatly, her face expressionless. Only her clenched jaw betrayed a response to the lies being spoken. Chen concluded, "We cannot allow citizens to obstruct police simply because they disagree. We cannot let children believe they stand above the law. Zara Williams must be held accountable." Mills nodded approvingly. "Thank you, Mr. Chen. Defense, your turn." Sarah Martinez stood trembling. She looked at her notes at Zara, then at the judge. Her voice was small, but steady. Your Honor, my client is an outstanding student who was simply walking home when she witnessed what she believed was police brutality. She exercised her constitutional right to record. She did not touch the officer. She did not shout. She simply raised her phone to capture what was happening. The words were brief, but carried every ounce of courage the young lawyer could muster in that decisive moment. Her voice grew stronger, though it still shook. Your Honor, the video speaks for itself. It shows an elderly man with a cane shoved to the ground by Officer Reed without cause. It shows my client Zara standing nearly 30 feet away, quietly recording, never interfering. Judge Mills's eyes showed only boredom. She nodded dismissively. Thank you, Miss Martinez. Mr. Chen, call your first witness. The courtroom doors opened. Officer Marcus Reed walked to the stand. A tall man, nearly 6'3", weighing over 220 pounds, in a sharply pressed uniform with badges gleaming under the light shoes polished like mirrors. On paper, he was the department's ideal 12 years of service commendations for bravery, a youth baseball coach, a husband and father of 2. But to Maya, the federal agent in the back row, this man was no hero. He was the embodiment of a system that protected abuse. She had already traced at least 30 covered-up cases linked to him, most involving the mistreatment of people of color. Reed placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Maya almost laughed bitterly at the irony. Prosecutor Chen guided him carefully, each question sounding pre-scripted to paint Reed as a calm hero and Zara as a threat. Officer Reed, please tell us what happened on the afternoon of October 15th. I received a call about a suspicious person standing outside Morrison's. When I arrived, I saw an elderly man who appeared lost, blocking the sidewalk. I approached him and gently guided him to sit on a bench. Maya narrowed her eyes, jotting down 2 words, gently guided. Reed continued, his tone steady. At that moment, the defendant appeared, shouting, accusing me of harassing the man. She pulled out her phone to film and moved closer despite my repeated instructions to keep her distance. The situation grew tense. A crowd began to gather. I had to explain that her filming was further confusing the elderly man, but she refused to listen and resisted when I attempted to arrest her. I used only the minimal force necessary to restrain her. As Reed spoke, Zara sat still, but her fists clenched tight, her eyes staring straight ahead. Maya watched fury boiling inside her. Every word was a lie wrapped in a polished delivery. For 20 minutes, Chen let Reed craft the image of himself as the model officer. Finally, it was Martinez's turn to cross-examine. She rose papers, trembling slightly in her hand. Officer Reed, you testified that you gently guided Mr. Johnson to sit on a bench, correct? That's correct. And you said he was blocking the sidewalk? Reed nodded. Martinez walked to the evidence table and pulled out a yellow envelope. Your Honor, the defense moves to admit the video recorded by my client. Chen jumped to his feet. Objection. The video is blurry, possibly altered, and cannot be authenticated. Judge Mills hardly looked up. Sustained. The video is inadmissible. Maya's jaw dropped. She had seen this happen before, but she could never grow numb to the absurdity of watching clear evidence dismissed with a few flimsy excuses. Martinez froze. Your Honor, the video clearly shows I've ruled. Move on. Without the video, Martinez was nearly defenseless. She tried another path. In the past 5 years, how many complaints have been filed against you? Objection. Irrelevant. Sustained. Have you ever been investigated for use of excessive force? Objection. Sustained. Every attempt was blocked. After 15 minutes of floundering, Martinez sank back into her seat, face-stricken. Prosecution, anything further? Mills asked. No, Your Honor. Officer Reed's testimony speaks for itself. Reed stepped down with a smirk, flashing Zara a look that said victory was his. Chen declared. The prosecution rests. The judge turned to Martinez. Does the defense have any witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Zara Williams. The room went silent. The slight girl rose and walked to the stand. The witness chair seemed to swallow the 15-year-old black teenager. But when she placed her hand on the Bible, her voice rang clear. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Martinez leaned in gently. Zara, can you tell us what you saw that afternoon? I was walking home from school when I saw Officer Reed speaking with an elderly man outside the grocery store. The man looked confused, struggling to walk with his cane. Reed shouted at him, asking questions over and over. The man just kept saying, I don't know. Then Reed grabbed his arm and suddenly shoved him hard in the chest. The man fell backward, his head hitting the pavement, and blood came out. The courtroom air grew heavy. Zara continued, I took out my phone and started recording because I thought no one would believe me without proof. I stayed still nearly 30 feet away. I didn't move closer. I didn't yell. Only when Reed noticed me filming did he come over and order me to delete it. I said I had the right to record on a public sidewalk. He said I was obstructing, then grabbed for my phone. When I pulled back, he slammed me against a parked car. That's when I was injured. Her words were plain, unembellished, but each one landed like a stone. Maya knew the truth shone through them, yet Judge Mills's indifferent stare was like ice water. Chen prepared to pounce, while Reed sat back with folded arms, his face brimming with confidence. As soon as Martinez finished her questions, Chen launched in. His strategy was obvious: discredit the girl. Miss Williams, you don't like the police, do you? Haven't you posted negative comments about law enforcement on social media? Objection overruled. Mills snapped as if the outcome had already been arranged. Chen pressed. Haven't you posted negative comments about police? Zara took a breath. I shared some articles about police reform. If you call that negative, then that's your choice. The prosecutor seized on it, smiling coldly. So you already had bias against Officer Reed? Zara lifted her chin. All I saw was an old man being hurt. That's not bias. That's the truth. But Chen didn't stop. You carried that negative feeling beforehand, so when you saw Officer Reed helping, you assumed he was doing wrong. Zara's voice stayed firm. He wasn't helping. He shoved him down. Back and forth it went for more than half an hour, each question a trap. Yet what astonished Maya was that the 15-year-old never wavered. She answered truthfully, even when honesty might make her look worse. Finally, Chen dropped his pen and returned to his seat. Zara was released back to the defense table. Martinez stood and whispered, The defense rests. The clock neared 5 o'clock. Judge Mills struck her gavel, calling a recess. The room emptied in silence. Maya stayed seated, her eyes fixed on Zara, alone at the wooden table. Reed stretched comfortably, swaggering with the air of a man already victorious. As he passed the defense table on his way to the water cooler, he leaned down and muttered something that made the girl's shoulders tremble. Then, stopping mid-stride, he bent closer, his words sharp. Do you know what your problem is? You don't know your place. Zara raised her head. Then what's my place? His grin was poisonous, silent, invisible, just like you should be. The slap rang out like a gunshot in the empty courtroom. Reed's massive hand had just struck across Zara's face, leaving a thin line of blood at the corner of her mouth. The room froze. Martinez's pen slipped from her fingers. The court reporter sat stunned. Zara slowly turned her head back, her dark eyes locked on Reed's. She wiped the blood with her hand and whispered, "That was a mistake." Reed laughed loudly. "What are you going to do, run home and tell your mommy?" Zara tilted her chin toward the back of the courtroom where Maya sat. "I don't need to do anything. She will." Reed spun around in confusion. Maya was already standing heels, echoing as she walked steadily down the aisle. She stopped in front of him, her voice calm and firm. "Officer Reed, you are under arrest." His shock twisted into rage. "Who the hell are you?" To Maya opened her leather wallet, flashing a golden badge. "Special Agent Maya Thompson, Federal Internal Affairs." Reed's face drained of color. You don't have the authority I can. And I am. You are under arrest for assault, civil rights violations, and conspiracy to cover up your crimes." Judge Mills returned just in time, furious. "Agent Thompson, this is blatant interference. You cannot disrupt my courtroom." Maya turned back, her voice firm. "Your Honor, I have been investigating corruption in this courthouse for 6 months. What just happened is the assault of a minor, a civil rights violation, and an obstruction of justice." She set a thick case file on the bench. "Marcus Reed is a target in a federal investigation tied to 17 formal complaints and 32 documented incidents of violence, all of it buried within this system." Judge Mills's face flushed red, but Maya was already placing a federal court order signed by Judge Catherine Morrison in front of her. The air in the courtroom grew dense as Maya continued. "Prosecutor Chen has ignored or downgraded 14 civil rights violations in the past 18 months. And Judge Mills, you have dismissed every single case against police for 3 years. The probability of that happening at random is less than 1 in 10,000. A side door opened and 2 federal agents in black suits stepped in, ready. "Agent Rodriguez, Agent Kim, please proceed," Maya said. Reed staggered back, stammering, "Wait, we can work something out." Agent Rodriguez snapped on the handcuffs, voice like ice. "Marcus Reed, you are under arrest for assault, civil rights violations, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Reed thrashed, shouting, "This is a setup." But the desperation in his eyes found no protection left. Mills stared down at the federal order. Chen, hands shaking, began gathering his files. He had just turned to slip out when Maya called after him. "Mr. Chen, don't go far. Within 48 hours, you will receive a subpoena." With the old power structure collapsing in plain sight, Maya turned to Zara. The small black teenager still sat at the defense table, wrists bearing the marks of the cuffs. Sarah, Maya said to the young lawyer, "Please remove those handcuffs from your client." Martinez fumbled with the key, her hands still trembling. Freed Zara rubbed her wrists and looked to Maya. "How long have you been watching me? 6 months. Your video of Mr. Johnson was the thread that unraveled the whole case, so I was just bait," Zara whispered. Maya shook her head, her voice gentling. "No, you were the brave kid who did the right thing. We were protecting you from a distance." Zara gave a thin, wry smile. "Didn't feel like protection when he slapped me." "I know," Maya said. "But this time he will pay for it. All charges against you are dismissed. You're free." Zara stood and bent to gather her ransacked backpack. Broken pencils, an eraser tin, a photo with her grandmother. Even the half sandwich her mother had packed that morning, she placed each small thing back with care, as if restoring her own dignity piece by piece. Watching her, Maya realized the girl's strength was not in muscle, but in those steady eyes lit by the conviction that justice, even when buried, can be dug out by truth and courage. Zara's hands did not shake. After everything, the night in juvenile detention, the humiliation in court, the sudden slap, she was startlingly steady. Maya asked softly, "Zara, may I ask you something?" The girl looked up from the worn backpack and nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Why didn't you fight back when he hit you?" Zara thought for a moment and answered quietly, because if I hit him, people would say I lost my temper. But when I stayed calm, everyone could see he was the one out of control. For the first time that day, Maya smiled. That is very wise. Zara's eyes shone. My grandma taught me that. She says, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let people reveal who they really are. Maya listened, feeling her own heart ease. Your grandmother is a wise woman. She is, Zara said with certainty. She'll be proud when I tell her about today. Zara zipped the backpack, stood, and looked around the shabby courtroom, the peeling paint, the dead clock, the empty judge's chair. Will this place change? She asked softly. It's already started, Maya says. Federal oversight. A new judge, a new prosecutor, 2 new policies. What happened today won't be allowed to happen again. Zara gave a small smile. Good. She paused at the door. What about the old man in the video Mr. Johnson is recovering, Maya assured her. His family has filed suit, and they are likely to receive a proper settlement. Zara nodded. He seemed kind. She walked out small in stature, but head held high. Maya watched her go, emotion rising in her chest. Then she turned to the young lawyer, still standing stunned at the defense table. Maya set a hand on her shoulder. You did well today. I didn't do anything, Martinez murmured. I was useless. Maya's grip tightened gently. You believed your client when no one else would. You stood up for her while the system stood against you. That matters more than you think. Please do not quit. Justice needs people like you. Martinez pressed her lips together as tears slipped down, and she nodded. Outside, satellite vans lined the curb. Reporters raised tripods. The story was already rippling everywhere. But Zara had left picked up by her mother in the parking lot. Maya stood on the courthouse steps watching the media frenzy. Her phone buzzed non-stop calls from FBI headquarters, from colleagues, from the prosecutors who would handle the cascade of new cases. But in that moment, she thought only of the 15-year-old who chose not to look away from injustice. 3 weeks later, at the FBI field office downtown, Maya received a small package. Inside was a handwritten letter and a clipped newspaper article. The handwriting was youthful but sure. Dear Agent Thompson, thank you for everything. I wanted you to know Mr. Johnson is doing better. I visited him last weekend. He doesn't remember much, but his family says he's recovering well. School feels different now. Some kids look at me funny, but many are kind. A few even asked me to help with a project on civil rights, and I said yes. My social studies teacher, Miss Rodriguez, showed the class your press conference and said what happened in court is how the system can work when good people refuse to give up. I think I want to be a lawyer, but not the kind who just makes money, the kind who takes the important cases. What do you think? Clipped to the letter was the local paper. The banner headline read, Federal Probe Triggers Wide-Ranging Corruption Indictments. It detailed Reed's arrest, Mills's suspension, and Chen's resignation. In the lower corner was a smaller story. Teen returns to school after courthouse incident. The last line made Maya smile. When asked about her plans, Zara Williams said homework like any other kid. Maya dialed. Hello, Zara's voice answered. Zara, this is Agent Thompson. I received your letter. Oh, I wasn't sure you'd have time to read it. I always have time for a friend's letter. And the answer is, yes, you will make an excellent lawyer. The kind who takes the cases that matter. Really, you really think so? I don't just think so, I know it. Because you already have the most important quality a lawyer can have. What's that? The courage to stand up for what's right, even when everyone else turns away. There was a short silence, then Zara whispered, Do you think what happened to me will still happen to other kids? Maya thought, then answered, I hope not. But if it does, I hope they remember your example that one person with a phone and the courage to use it can change everything. Half a year later, Reed was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for violating civil rights. Mills lost her judgeship and her law license. Chen was disbarred and faced criminal charges. The local court was overhauled from top to bottom, a new judge, a new prosecutor, mandatory body camera policies, and independent review. The FBI established a permanent civil rights office to monitor abuses. But the real victory was not in the sentences or the new rules. It was in the fact that a 15-year-old refused to accept injustice as normal. and by refusing helped bend the system toward the truth. 6 months later, Maya accepted an invitation to speak at Zara's high school graduation. The girl had not only finished the school year with excellence, but had also earned 3 full scholarships to universities. Standing at the podium, bathed in golden sunlight and surrounded by the applause of hundreds, Maya looked at Zara in her deep blue gown and smiled. From a child once handcuffed in a crumbling courtroom, Zara had become a symbol of courage and conviction, and that Maya thought was the truest kind of justice when a child believes she can change the world and then actually does. In her valedictorian speech, Zara stood on a plain wooden stage before a packed auditorium. Her voice carried clear and certain. Sometimes people ask me if I regret recording that video. The answer is no, because staying silent in the face of injustice doesn't make you safer. It just makes you complicit. The hall erupted. Students, parents, teachers, and neighbors all rose clapping for 5 full minutes. In that moment, there were no age gaps, no divisions of status, only a shared belief that truth has the power to awaken an entire community. After the ceremony, Maya found Zara among the crowd of friends and family. She embraced her and whispered, "Congratulations. Your grandmother would be so proud." Zara smiled, her eyes glowing. "She already told me. I'm walking in her footsteps. She was part of the civil rights movement in the 60s. She always says every generation has to fight the same battles in new ways." Maya nodded, moved. "A wise woman, the wisest," Zara said firmly. "And she told me to thank you for showing me that this system can still work, if the right people are paying attention and don't give up." Maya smiled. "The system only works because of people like you willing to make sure it doesn't fail." As the crowd thinned, Maya stood back watching Zara pose for photos with friends and family. She knew that in just a few months Zara would head to college, and in a few years she would wear a lawyer's robe, standing in other courtrooms to defend those in need of someone to believe in them. The journey that began with a 15-second video had grown into something much larger, a reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to look away from injustice. It was also proof that sometimes the strongest voice in a room isn't the gavel of a judge, but the steady voice of the powerless someone who refuses to be silenced. More than that, it gave hope that the next generation would be better because of young people like Zara Williams, willing to listen, willing to face the truth, and willing to dream of a fairer world. That afternoon, Maya drove home. On the long road back, she thought about courage. Not the loud, flashy kind that makes headlines, but the quiet, steady kind, moment by moment. The courage to raise a phone when everyone else looks away. The courage to speak the truth, even when no one wants to hear it. The kind of courage a 15-year-old girl had shown in a decaying courtroom when she refused to let injustice go unchallenged. As her car turned into the driveway, Maya realized that Zara had taught her something too. Justice is not only about punishing the guilty or protecting the innocent. Justice is about building a world where children can walk home from school without witnessing violence. Justice is a world where recording the truth doesn't get you arrested but forces the guilty to face accountability. Justice is a system that protects people instead of demanding that people protect the system. And sometimes it all begins with one person who dares not to look away. And that is the story of how a 15-year-old girl's courage helped change a broken system. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. We'd also love to hear from you. What are your thoughts about Zara's courage and Maya's fight for justice? Leave your feelings and reflections down in the comments. We read every single one. Together, let's keep these conversations alive.